There is a particular kind of question that does not seek understanding. It seeks positioning. It sounds casual, harmless, even curious, but beneath the surface something tightens, a subtle comparison, a quiet measurement, an invisible scale being adjusted in real time. Jealousy rarely announces itself as envy. It disguises itself as interest, as concern, as conversation. And if you listen closely, you will notice that certain questions are not about connection at all. They're about calibration, about finding where you stand so someone else can decide where they stand. Most people answer these questions automatically, politely, honestly, without realizing they have just handed over something fragile, their confidence, their progress, their joy. Understanding these questions is not about suspicion, it is about awareness, because jealousy speaks in patterns, and patterns can be recognized. There are moments in conversation when something shifts, quietly. A question is asked, and on the surface it sounds ordinary, friendly, appropriate. Yet somewhere beneath politeness, a subtle tension appears. Not alarm, not anger, just a small internal pause. Jealousy rarely enters a room loudly. It does not announce itself with accusation or hostility. Instead, it blends in. It borrows the language of curiosity. It hides behind concern. It often wears a smile. These questions arrive softly. How did you manage that? So what are you doing now? Are you really happy with it? They sound conversational, but they do not land that way. What makes them unsettling is not their content, but their intention. They do not move toward understanding, they move sideways, toward comparison, toward positioning, toward an unspoken recalibration of roles. The person being asked often feels this instinctively. There's a fleeting sense of being measured, of being placed on an invisible scale, and without realizing it, they begin to respond carefully. They soften achievements, they minimize joy, they add disclaimers. It happens quickly, almost unconsciously, because the social world has taught politeness over self-protection. It is taught answering over attunement. It is taught transparency as virtue, even when transparency is not safe. Jealous questions do not seek information, they seek orientation. They are attempts to locate the other person within a hierarchy that exists only in the asker's mind. This is why they often come at moments of growth, after a promotion, after a visible change, after confidence settles into someone's posture. Jealousy is not provoked by failure. It is provoked by proximity to success, especially when that success feels unearned, unpredictable, or threatening to one's self-image. So the questions begin. They are framed as interest, but they carry a quiet urgency, an underlying need to know where the balance stands now, who is ahead, who is behind, who needs to be reassured. And the person being questioned feels it in their body before they understand it cognitively. The breath tightens slightly. The answer becomes longer than necessary, or shorter, or oddly defensive. There's a reason for this. Human beings are exquisitely sensitive to social threat. Long before logic intervenes, the nervous system assesses tone, timing, and subtext. It recognizes when attention is curious versus when it is comparative. Jealous questions activate this detection system, not because they are aggressive, but because they are intrusive in a specific way. They ask for access to something personal, progress, happiness, certainty, without offering safety in return. What makes these questions particularly confusing is that they often come from familiar people, friends, colleagues, family members, people who, in theory, should be supportive. This creates an internal conflict. There is the desire to be open, to be kind, to not assume ill intent, and yet there is a sensation of being pulled into a subtle performance, of being asked to justify one's path, to explain success, to downplay momentum so that the emotional equilibrium of the relationship remains intact. Many people respond by over-explaining. They fill the silence with context, struggle, humility. They rush to reassure the other person that nothing has really changed, that they are still relatable, still safe. In doing so, something important is surrendered: the right to let joy exist without explanation, the right to hold progress privately, the right to not manage another person's emotional response. This chapter is not about labeling others as jealous. It is about recognizing a pattern where questions are less about connection and more about containment, where curiosity masks insecurity, where interest becomes a way of regulating discomfort. Jealousy does not always want what the other person has. Often it wants relief from what the other person represents: a reminder, a comparison, a disruption of internal narratives. Recognizing this pattern does not require suspicion or withdrawal. It requires awareness. Awareness of how certain questions feel, of how the body responds, of how energy shifts in the room. Because the first step in understanding jealousy is not confrontation. It is noticing. Not every question is neutral. Not every curiosity is harmless. And not every answer is owed. Understanding begins the moment someone realizes that discomfort is information, and that subtle interrogation is still interrogation, even when it arrives quietly. Jealousy does not begin with another person. It begins internally, long before any question is asked. At its core, envy is not about wanting what someone else has. It's about fearing what someone else's success awakens. A quiet alarm goes off inside the psyche, a sense that something essential is being threatened. Not resources, but identity. Not opportunity, but self-worth. Most jealous questions are born from comparison learned early, from environments where value was measured, where attention felt scarce, where approval had to be earned rather than given. In childhood, many people learned to locate themselves through contrast. They were praised for being better, faster, smarter, or diminished for falling behind. Love became conditional, validation became competitive, and slowly the mind absorbed a dangerous equation: worth is relative. That equation does not disappear in adulthood. It simply becomes more subtle. When someone else progresses, changes, or grows visibly, it activates this early conditioning. The nervous system responds before thought. There is a tightening, a rush of internal questions. What does this mean about me? Am I falling behind? Did I miss something? Jealousy is not always hostile. Often it is anxious. It emerges when a person's sense of self is fragile, when identity is built on comparison rather than internal grounding. Seeing someone else move forward destabilizes the mental equilibrium. The world suddenly feels uneven. So the mind looks for information. Questions become a way of regulating discomfort. Not to celebrate, not to understand, but to recalibrate. This is why jealous questions often focus on specifics: numbers, timing, validation. How much are you making now? So is it actually going well? Do you think it'll last? These are not neutral inquiries. They are attempts to restore internal balance by shrinking uncertainty. If the other person's success can be explained, qualified, or minimized, the threat feels smaller. Jealousy also thrives in environments where emotional expression is restricted. People who were never allowed to feel disappointment openly often redirect it outward. Instead of acknowledging insecurity, they mask it with curiosity. Instead of admitting fear, they ask questions that subtly probe for weakness. In this way, jealousy becomes indirect. It hides behind friendliness because direct vulnerability feels unsafe. Another important root lies in identity stagnation. When a person feels stuck, emotionally, professionally, or relationally, someone else's movement becomes painful. Not because movement is wrong, but because it exposes immobility. The contrast creates internal pressure. So, jealousy becomes a coping mechanism. If progress can be scrutinized, explained away, or destabilized emotionally, the immobility feels less unbearable. This does not make the jealous person malicious. It makes them unregulated. They are managing discomfort without tools. And because many cultures discourage honest expressions of envy, people rarely learn how to process it healthfully. Jealousy becomes something to disguise rather than understand. So it emerges sideways, through questions, tone, and subtle comparisons.
It is also important to recognize that jealousy is often fueled by proximity. Strangers' success rarely triggers it deeply. It's those nearby, friends, siblings, who evoke it most, because proximity invites comparison. Someone similar challenges the story a person tells themselves about why they are where they are. It removes excuses, it introduces discomfort, and discomfort seeks resolution. So the questions return. They are not about the other person, they are about soothing the self. Understanding this shifts perspective. Jealous questions are not personal attacks, they are signals. Signals of unmet needs, fragile self-concepts, and unprocessed comparison wounds. This does not mean they should be indulged, it does mean they can be recognized without bitterness. The roots of envy are not found in cruelty, they are found in fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of being unseen, fear of being inadequate without contrast. And until those fears are acknowledged internally, they will continue to surface externally, disguised as interest, concern, or curiosity. This chapter is not about excusing jealous behavior, it is about understanding where it comes from, because clarity dissolves confusion. And once the origins of envy are seen clearly, its questions lose some of their power. The human brain is not designed to exist in isolation. From the earliest stages of evolution, survival depended on awareness of others, who was stronger, who was safer to align with, who posed a threat. Social comparison once served a practical purpose. It helped humans orient themselves within groups, maintain cohesion, and anticipate danger. But the same neural systems that once protected survival now shape modern jealousy. At the center of this process lies the brain's threat and reward circuitry. When a person observes someone else's success, change, or confidence, the brain automatically evaluates meaning, not consciously, but instantly. Where do I stand now? What does this mean about me? This evaluation happens in milliseconds.
Jealousy rarely arrives loudly. It does not usually announce itself as hostility or confrontation. Instead, it appears in fragments, in tone, in timing, in the slight tightening of energy when something good is shared. And this is where the inner conflict begins, because the person being questioned often senses something is off, but cannot immediately name it. The questions sound ordinary, harmless even. On the surface, they resemble curiosity. But beneath them, there is tension, a pause that lingers too long, a compliment that feels incomplete, an interest that feels investigative rather than celebratory. The body notices before the mind does, a subtle contraction in the chest, a hesitation before answering, a feeling of being evaluated rather than understood. This is the erosion. Not dramatic, not explosive, but gradual. Jealous dynamics create a quiet psychological pressure. They place the recipient in an unspoken dilemma. Explain yourself or protect yourself. Reassure or retreat. Soften your light or risk discomfort. Many people instinctively choose reassurance. They minimize their achievement. They downplay their happiness. They shrink their momentum to make the other person comfortable. This response is deeply human. Belonging has always mattered. The nervous system is wired to preserve connection. If someone's tone suggests disapproval or instability, the body often responds by adjusting itself. But this adjustment carries a cost. Each time someone edits their truth to soothe another's insecurity, something small is sacrificed. Not visibly, not immediately, but internally. Confidence becomes cautious. Excitement becomes filtered. Authenticity becomes strategic. Over time, this creates fragmentation. The outer self begins to calculate. The inner self begins to withhold, and the tension grows. There's another layer to this conflict: doubt. Jealous questions are often framed in ways that plant uncertainty. Are you sure that's stable? Is that really a good idea? Do you think it will last? Even when the person knows their path, repetition creates cognitive friction. The brain begins to revisit decisions that were once clear, not because they were wrong, but because doubt is contagious. Human beings co-regulate emotionally. Exposure to skepticism alters internal states. A confident plan can begin to feel fragile when repeatedly examined under suspicion. This is how erosion works. Not by direct attack, but by sustained questioning. There is also guilt. Success can create distance. Growth can shift dynamics. The person receiving jealous energy may feel responsible for the discomfort of others. They may ask themselves, "Am I being insensitive? Should I tone it down?" This guilt reinforces the pattern. Instead of recognizing jealousy as the other person's internal process, they internalize it as their own excess. And slowly, ambition softens. Visibility decreases. Joy becomes private. Yet resistance also exists. Some part of the psyche recognizes the imbalance. It senses that something unfair is occurring, that being questioned repeatedly is not neutral, it is destabilizing. This resistance does not always express itself outwardly. Sometimes it shows up as quiet withdrawal, less sharing, shorter answers, emotional distance. This is not cruelty. It is self-protection. When someone senses that their light triggers discomfort, they may instinctively dim it or relocate it entirely. Jealous dynamics strain relationships not because of conflict, but because of containment. One person expands, the other contracts, and the space between them becomes fragile. And in that fragility, honesty becomes risky. The deepest conflict is this: the desire to remain connected while refusing to shrink, to protect self-worth without abandoning relationship, to answer honestly without absorbing doubt. This tension is exhausting. It forces constant calibration. Should this be shared? Is this safe to say? Will this create distance? Living under that internal negotiation slowly drains energy. And yet many endure it quietly, because the cost of confrontation feels heavier than the cost of accommodation. But something begins to shift when awareness enters the dynamic. When the person recognizes the pattern, not as coincidence, not as personality clash, but as jealousy seeking regulation. Recognition interrupts erosion. The questions no longer feel confusing, they feel revealing. And clarity restores strength. What once felt personal begins to feel contextual. And when something becomes contextual, it loses its power to define identity. The inner conflict does not disappear overnight, but it transforms. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" the mind begins to ask, "What is happening here?" That shift marks the beginning of psychological sovereignty. And sovereignty changes everything. The turning point does not arrive with clarity at first. It arrives with fatigue. Not physical exhaustion, but a quieter kind. The weariness of managing other people's reactions. The subtle tiredness that comes from explaining joy, softening success, and constantly translating one's inner life into something palatable for others. At some point, the questions stop feeling curious. They start feeling repetitive, predictable. And that predictability reveals something important. The person begins to notice that the questions don't change, even as the answers do. No matter how carefully they explain, reassure, or minimize, the tone remains the same. The curiosity never settles. The tension never resolves. This is the moment of realization. Not "they are curious," but "they are unsettled." The awareness is subtle, but decisive. It becomes clear that these questions are not bridges, they are probes. They are not invitations into connection, but attempts to regulate discomfort by accessing someone else's stability. And for the first time, the person stops responding automatically. They pause. In that pause, something shifts internally. They notice how often they had been narrating their life, offering context no one asked for, justifying choices that didn't require defense, explaining happiness as if it needed permission. They realized how much energy had been spent maintaining equilibrium for others.
This recognition is not angry, it is clarifying. Because clarity is calmer than confrontation. The turning point is when the person understands that openness without safety is exposure. That honesty without discernment is not virtue, it's vulnerability without protection. They begin to see that not every question deserves an answer, and not every curiosity is benign. This does not harden them, it centers them. Instead of feeling guilty for withholding information, they feel grounded in choosing what belongs to them. They recognize that privacy is not secrecy, it is sovereignty. The nervous system responds to this shift immediately. There is relief in no longer managing perception, relief in letting silence do its work, relief in allowing questions to pass without invitation. They begin to answer differently, not defensively, not evasively, but neutrally. Shorter responses, fewer details, less emotional investment. And something unexpected happens. The dynamic changes. Jealous energy loses momentum when it is not fed. Without explanation to dissect, without reassurance to absorb, the probing questions soften or stop entirely. This is not manipulation, it is energetic alignment. The person is no longer participating in a relational pattern that required self-erasure. They also begin to notice who responds differently. Some people grow uncomfortable when access is reduced. Others grow more respectful. Some drift away quietly. Others remain, grounded in genuine connection. This too is information. The turning point brings discernment not just about questions, but about relationships. Who listens without measuring? Who celebrates without comparison? Who remains steady when no longer reassured? These realizations are not painful in the way confrontation would be. They are sobering. They clarify which connections were built on mutual presence and which were built on emotional regulation. The person no longer feels compelled to prove that they are doing well. They no longer feel the need to justify growth. They understand that confidence does not require explanation. The most profound realization is this: jealousy loses its power when it is no longer mistaken for what it is not. Once seen clearly, it becomes easier to disengage without resentment, to remain kind without being exposed, to be open without being available for scrutiny. The turning point is not about withdrawing from people. It is about withdrawing from patterns. Patterns that required performance, patterns that demanded reassurance, patterns that diluted authenticity. From this moment forward, the person carries a new internal orientation. They move slower. They speak less, but with more